the best a man can get.
Welcome back to First Things First. We're now joined by Chris Canty. Canty, how you doing?
Good to see you, brother. Good, what's good? I'm good, Jenna. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing really well.
You got the bright colors on.
Thank you. That is what I'm wearing.
Trying to bring some warmth.
Correct. That is what I am doing.
I appreciate that.
You see what's happening?
I see exactly what she's doing right now.
I'm
not on board with it, Jenna.
I refuse.
I know what you're doing.
Jenna thinks this is her not being awkward because yesterday Chris Canty called her awkward, and then of course
I was striking up a conversation.
She's as awkward as can be.
Chris Canty.
So,
we'll try again tomorrow, Chris.
Thank you very much.
Epic fail. We'll try that again tomorrow. High five. The NFL draft is right around the corner. Still time for draft picks to slide up and down based on literally anything. For Josh Rosen, it's been an interesting process. So he's been called a lot, right? A little cocky, a little arrogant, a little too intellectual. Now he's being called, wait for it, a millennial. Former UCLA coach Jim Mora Jr., who coached Rosen for 3 years, had this to say about his former quarterback, quote, "He needs to be challenged intellectually so he doesn't get bored. He's a millennial. He wants to know why. Millennials, once they know why, they're good." Rosen tweeted this out. Why? Shrug emoji. Hashtag why. So, Chris, what did you make of Jim Mora's comments?
Well, I didn't understand where he was coming from in terms of when he said millennial and saying that he needs to be challenged, or I guess you got to engage him in this way. I think most professional athletes need to be challenged and stimulated in that way. You have to get them engaged so you can bring the best out of what that player might have to offer in terms of being able to produce on the field. So when you talk about a quarterback like Josh Rosen asking the questions, why are we doing things a certain way, I don't have an issue with that. To me, a player that wants to get to the why is going to have a better chance of being able to match his physical gifts and his skill sets and have that translate to production on the field. That's what it's all about. I don't need a guy that gets to the line of scrimmage and he panics because the look that the defense shows him on Sunday isn't what the coaches drew up for the scout team on Wednesday and Thursday. I need somebody that's capable of being able to think on their feet. And Josh Rosen strikes me as a quarterback that's capable of doing that based on what I saw on the college game tape and from what his coach is talking about him now. So I like the fact that a player wants to know why he's being asked to do certain things. I don't need a guy that's a robot on Sundays.
Yeah, a few things from what he said. I'm not a millennial, thank God, but I need to be challenged. I want to know why, and I need to be challenged even when I was in college. When I was in the pros, I need to be challenged. I'm not a millennial. I don't believe that they absolutely have to come together. What I think is going on with UCLA is I think that collectively that Jim Mora is part of the Josh Rosen team. And there was speculation that Josh potentially didn't want to go to Cleveland. I believe this is part of it. So the coach comes out with comments that would, because in deciding if he was going to go pro, the coach had a lot to do with it. There's no one in UCLA's program has more experience with pro football than Coach Mora. He also used to be a defensive back coach in the National Football League. We used to compete against him every summer with the New Orleans Saints, so I'm very familiar with Coach Mora. He is a great evaluator of talent. He does know what he's talking about, but I believe this is just a little bit of smoke for them to be able to get off the Cleveland team without them saying he does not want to go there, without him not looking bad, because he made a suggestion. I believe Cleveland should draft Sam Darnold. Now, why would he say that? I believe he loves Josh. I believe he believes Josh is a franchise quarterback. But Josh can't say he don't want to be in Cleveland, but I can. As a former NFL coach, the son of an NFL coach, I can say those things, and I can take the heat. So I believe collectively their group has decided he doesn't want to be in Cleveland. And the coach enunciated some of that by saying the things that he said. NFL players do want to be challenged. NFL players, from my understanding, they want to learn. They want to get better. And to get better, you need to find out why. And most NFL coaches, which I believe they're the best coaches, they are far superior than college and high school coaches. That's why they're in the NFL. They get to the why part, and that's how they make the players better.
And we got to be fair here and not forget who has Josh Rosen been the whole time we've known him, up until his name's called on draft day. He's a college athlete. A student athlete is what we're told. What is college about? Learning, asking questions, figuring things out, being intellectually curious outside of what your career vocation is going to be. I was a lot more scattershot. I think most of us were a lot more scattershot in college than we were once we became professionals. Once you become a professional, you are much more focused. It doesn't mean your brain turns off. It doesn't mean you stop having other things that interest you, but it does mean you now have a job that you're paid to focus your primary attention on. Like, the idea that the curiosity is a bad thing, I just reject in basically every line of work except for, I guess you could argue, the military, where you just have, you know what I mean? You're supposed to just take orders, follow the chain of command. Cece, you sent me a video, Josh working with Aaron Rodgers. It was actually, I think it was like a Lincoln commercial, essentially, but it was long form, and he's doing a lot of things. And one of the things that I thought was interesting is Aaron is describing, I think it was back shoulder throws, but whatever he's describing, I've seen countless videos like this or instances like this where a pro is talking to a potential draft pick, and he says to him, so you understand what I mean? And the guy just goes, yeah. Yeah, and you know he doesn't actually understand it. He's just going along with it. What did Rosen do? Rosen actually stopped and said, wait, why? Explain it to me. I want that because he is going to be a rookie. He does have a lot to learn. Like, someone that has a thirst for learning, I think is a positive, particularly at that position.
I just wonder, Chris, if the other part of this that bothers people is that he has a lot of outside interests, as opposed to maybe the intellectual side of it or the curiosity side of it, because there's this mentality in football that you want football players, especially young football players, to need, eat, breathe, you know, desire, crave football, and not have football be like, I love football, but I love like 1,000 other things as well. Like, when you come in, you want these guys to be, and you talked about this, Cece, completely committed to the craft wholeheartedly, so that you coaches can coach you, so that you can learn, so that you can be the best you can be. And I wonder if putting it out there that Josh Rosen has all these outside interests, it makes it appear as if football is a hobby or his job as opposed to his lifeblood.
Well, here's the thing, Jen. I think people are concerned that a player might not be as committed if they're interested in other things outside of football, but I don't think that's true. There's nothing wrong with being a balanced individual. And so when I hear all of the things about Josh Rosen in terms of he's a free thinker and he likes to, you know, engage in conversations and stuff outside of topics that relate to football, I don't have a problem with that. I actually think that's a good thing, to be a balanced person, because if you have somebody that's out of whack, so to speak, then you don't know that that person is going to be grounded enough to be consistent in his approach to his job. And I think that's the concern with a lot of teams that see guys with interests outside of football. Are you committed, and do you love football, versus is this something that you just you like the things that come along with it? So I think that's the question that has to be answered. But you don't know that unless you get into the interview process with Josh Rosen and have conversations.
Right. A player who went through a similar thing was Robert Smith at Ohio State, when he had a problem because he couldn't take a certain class because in his major, I think he was in pre-med at the time, was interested in being a doctor at Ohio State. The professor that was teaching the class in the spring, he could take that class, but he would have to miss some football practice. In Ohio State, we don't let players take classes after 1 o'clock because you're into the daily schedule. So Robert had a problem with that. So he had some of these same questions. Does he love football? Is he more interested in being a doctor? Is he more interested in his education? Is he too much of an intellectual? And this was a long time ago. So it's not as if we haven't had this question before. Most of these people, though, they're not in the NFL locker room. They don't realize there's a lot of bright people in there. There's a lot of bright coaches. And the more you can learn, the more you can learn does not put a ceiling on your potential. Regardless of what your ability is athletically, if you're not a learned person, your ceiling is limited to what you can be. The greatest athletes that we have seen, they also happen to be the people that are learned in their craft. And that elevates them above people who are just talented. Everyone in the league is talented. So what's going to separate you? Your ability to be able to learn something and apply it and apply that skill to your game. The locker room is full of people just like Josh Rosen. They just don't have the same background. They don't come from wealthy families. They don't have the things that he had going for him when they got to this point in their life.
And I happen to reject the premise that you can just lump millennials into one group and say this is how millennials are. But let's just say that's correct, because I know a lot of people feel that way. Oh, these millennials. Well, guess who Josh Rosen's going to be playing with? A bunch of millennials. Millennials are people born from 82 to 04. Like, Basically, everyone in the league, Aaron Rodgers' age or younger, is in that group. So if it is a lot of people he's going to be playing with that are intellectually curious, do have outside interests, that makes him relatable to them. We're seeing guys throughout with the more socially conscious athlete now. We're seeing guys show you that while they are extraordinary athletes and very dedicated to their craft, they do have outside interests. Like, to me, that makes you relatable as a rookie.
Right now in the NFL locker room, it's more geared towards the millennials and how they teach things, how everything's applied, how everything is downloaded on the computers.
Yeah.
It is not fit for the generation before them. The NFL right now is fit for millennials, and that's why the league will continue to prosper.
Well, Chris Canty, I have no outside interest other than this show. This is literally the only thing
That's not true.
that is 100% true.
You are a gym rat. Jim.
You're right. I have two interests.
Exactly.
We'll be doing stuff related to the show.
Two interests. That's it. Just the gym and this show. Stop rolling your eyes.
Check it out.
Chris Carter. Stick around. Chris Canty coming up. Can Amari Cooper and the Raiders turn it around under John Gruden?
Grab
Let my
that
phone
man.
alone.
Let's check on
Let's just see.
Let's check on tomorrow.
All right. Nice.